All right, so good morning or afternoon, whatever time it is you watch this video. So it's gonna be garden conversations and a bit more than that about just SHTF and what's going on in the world with Ukraine and all that. So it's a lot of stuff, and so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time getting into it. I got some notes, and keep in mind the time frame on these news articles I'm going to go over as we're out here in the greenhouse. I wanted to get some stuff planted, but it's supposed to be another frost down in the 20s, mid-20s next weekend, so I'm going to wait. So this one here is kind of stuff I've talked about before. Demand for garden seeds still high. Notice this is in January. This is before all the war footing stuff going on with Ukraine. All right, they're talking about disinfectant sprays and toilet papers and all that good jazz. But where it gets into this, what I want to bring out is seed buying spiked 300% in 2020. Now we're a couple of years into this. A lot of stuff was out of stock early 2021, and of course, seeds may be hard to come by again this year. Now note this is in January. So National Garden Bureau says 2022 seed orders so far at least are as strong as last year and may rise. You can guarantee they're going to rise. You may not get seeds as soon as you want, so make sure you're ordering your seeds early. I've discussed this a few times. I've made a few comments about it in past videos, but this is the kind of reason as to why, right? So peas, beans, tomatoes, cucumber seeds always popular. Home Garden Association, etc., etc. What I want to bring out is inventories continue to be lean. Hopefully the rain won't mess up my audio. And of course, they're talking about seed stuff selling out. They're trying to put a nice narrative spin on it. This is back in January, keep in mind. If your favorite varieties are sold out, embrace it as an opportunity to try something new. In other words, deal with it. And of course, Fairy Morse, you're probably familiar with them. High demand for seeds. Sears, which I didn't even know you could buy seeds from Sears. Or orders for herbs and vegetables. Now, just keep this in the back of your mind. The other stuff we're going to go through is probably a little bit more intense. But we'll lay the groundwork as to why we need to be getting the seeds we need to be getting. And if you think these situations are going to get worse or get better, this is January. All right, this is from AgriPulse right here. I didn't print the first page because I didn't want to waste my printer paper. This article is from January 10th. All right, because they're trying to spin the narrative so that all the problems we're facing now, and you're going to see this narrative again and again in the news, all the stuff we're having problems with now is because of the situation with Ukraine and Russia and all that. That's why I want to go over this. Notice the narrative being formed about that. So this is January 10th. Now I'm going to put all these articles in the description. So at this point, they're talking about being COVID-19. Fertilizer prices explode in 2021 and hit even harder in 2022, according to Texas A&M. All right, bear in mind the date before the war, right? So it's only gotten worse. Study found the average feed grain operation would be $128,000 more in fertilizer in 2022, at an increase in price and almost $40 per acre, $39.55. Rice will be hit the hardest. All right. And then you go into some of the other stuff. So this is one reason why the order of what's going on with the dates is important. This is from January. Russia to halt the fertilizer exports, expected to boost prices and shortfalls. All right, so 2022 crop producers are experiencing sticker shock as well as product shortages, and that's for recent price fertilizers have increased, right? All three primary nutrients here, NP and K, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, all going up significant. So farmers are probably going to end up having to use less fertilizer, which means less fertilizer means less output. So their fertilizer bill is more than doubled. Now this is January. Russians already halting fertilizer in January, before the war. All right, and then there's tariffs. So tariffs on foreign fertilizer, can't speak, like the ones effectively stopped U.S. imports of phosphate fertilizer from Morocco and Russia. So you got tariffs from the U.S. back in January. Biden administration is scheduled to begin hitting potash fertilizer from Belarus with sanctions starting in April. Now, this is a January article before all the war stuff, so I'm not sure what that's going on, why they were hitting Belarus with sanctions on potash starting in April. So Morocco and Russia represent 15 to 20% of domestic fertilizer demand. If you take that out off the market, prices go up. So 15-20% of our imports comes from Morocco and Russia. So that's obviously going to increase the prices and or lower the amount of available fertilizer that the farmers have to use and you have to use when you're talking about going down to the big box store and buying a bag of 10 or something like that. So if you have not done that, get you a bag of fertilizer. Now, I know everybody's already hung up on organic, not organic, and that kind of stuff. I have to say, under these circumstances, it's already almost impossible to be completely organic anyway. If you buy something that comes out of a box, if you buy something from a restaurant, if you buy something from whatever, 99% of the time you're going to end up having something that's not organic in there. It's going to have been treated with some kind of herbicide, pesticide, whatever. Right now, you need to worry less about ideology and more about growing food. So if that means pesticide, herbicide, Miracle-Gro, whatever, if you see it and you can get it and you can afford it, get some and put it up. And if you want to continue to be organic and save it, then do that, obviously. But in case you need it, in case you cannot get something from the store, you don't want to go back to a hungry family and say, but at least we're organic. We want to say, I did what I had to do. I piled those plants on top of each other and fed them Miracle-Gro and herbicides and pesticides to have the maximum yield, but at least there's food on the table, right? So anyways, get off my soapbox there for a minute. So not only Russia and Ukraine both key grain exporters, but the crisis also, exacerbated an existing problem. So I wanted to start this one. They're the fertilizer used to feed crops, right? We don't see global fertilizer shortage situation anytime soon. This is January, right? Actually, take it back. This is February 28th. This is a few days after that. So don't see global fertilizer shortage situation abating anytime soon. Sorry, correction for that. So it's not going away anytime soon because the fertilizer is used to feed crops. And then here it lists out 3 bullet points as to what's going on. Natural gas used to produce nitrogen-based plant food. Who is a major exporter of natural gas? Russia, right? So natural gas. Russia and China have imposed export restrictions on fertilizer. Both are big exporters of plant food. All right, so you got the decline in exports leading to the vital nutrients, yada, yada, yada. China and Russia account for 29% of the exports of nitrogen-based plant foods. China and Russia. You see the battle lines being drawn, right? This country has, this country needs, okay? When it comes to import, financial type export conflicts. Not shooting wars, but when it comes to power struggles over the food supply. So Russia and China, they have export restrictions on plant food. 29% of the nitrogen-based plant food comes from those. So the 2 countries have a significant, although smaller shares of phosphate and potash. So they do supply other stuff as well, although it's not as important as the nitrogen-based, but still significant. Of course, they expect these restrictions to tighten the global fertilizer availability. Now that's important when you think about who imports those fertilizers that is now unavailable. And even if we in the United States don't import some of their stuff, maybe some ally does. Maybe some of you out there watching this may not be in the United States. Now, if that almost 30% of the fertilizer is off the market, that means the countries that do import that now have to go on the open market somewhere else and buy it from some other country that maybe we do already buy ours from. So that means our prices will go up because now they're going to be competing. So that global competition for limited resources is going to make those prices go up. And just like what's going to make the food costs go up and food availability go down, not to mention the fact that gas prices, diesel prices through the roof and only getting worse, means all that food has to be shipped to you. So if you live in an area where you can grow something, grow it. If you live in the north and you can't get stuff in the south, buy it now and stockpile it if you can't grow it. Because you're going to end up in a situation where something has to be trucked to you further away. Like if you're in Canada and you're trying to get tomatoes and it's not tomato growing season, those tomatoes were shipped from who knows where, Mexico, southern United States, wherever. So those tomatoes are going to have to be trucked, and it's going to be, the costs are going to go way up on anything that has to get trucked in there. So let's continue. All right, so you also got sanctions. obviously we got a lot of sanctions going on right now with all the tense situation going on over there in Eastern Europe. So expect restrictions to tighten the global fertilizer availability, which is already being hit by this, which was already being hit in January by export restrictions. So you can see it. And of course, the good news is the prices are going to be good for the company. So if you're interested in buying the stock in those markets, you may make some money off of it. So let's continue right along. All right, so this is February 25th. So we're building our timeline up. Wheat prices jumped to highest level in 12 years. Okay. They're talking about the invasion. That's where they're starting to blame everything on the invasion instead of the fact that if you look at January, even go back November, December, these problems existed. They've just gotten a lot worse because of what's going on. So this seems to be as much of a competition of resources among nations as anything else. I'm not going to theorize as to how much of a role that may play in the current conflict. But, make your own decisions whether or not this played any kind of role at all. All right, so Russia's invasion of Ukraine throttled exports from one of the world's largest grain suppliers. 13% of global corn exports and 12% of all wheat, of the global wheat, flows from, global corn and 12% of wheat flows from Ukraine. Okay, so that's one country producing a significant amount on the global stage. It's not counting the fact that you also have all these other countries, you have sanctions and possible disruptions from what's going on. Okay, threatening those flows, Moscow risks disrupting supplies to China while setting off scramble among consumers of fragile Middle Eastern economies when food inflation is already high, because the Middle East buys a lot of stuff from them. We don't want more instability. You also had attacks on the ships. So ocean vessel chartered by one of the world's largest food suppliers, Cargill Inc., was hit by a projectile off the coast of Ukraine in the Black Sea on Thursday at the time that this was done. So even some issues going on with security of some of these vessels. So you also have U.S. grain giants have also begun closing operations. So you got this one, Midland Company, Archer Daniels Midland Company closed its facilities in Ukraine, included the grain terminal port near Odessa. All right, wheat futures jumped 12% so far this week at the time of the writing of this, hitting their highest level since July 2012. Let's go down to the bottom, all right? Because it seems like they were expecting this to be kind of a one and done over pretty fast, and that turns out it's not looking like that's going to be the case, all right? So the fighting shouldn't have much impact, they're saying, on planting or harvesting crops, according to Mike Lee, whoever that is, the owner of Green Square Agro Consulting. So according to this analyst, didn't think it's going to be that big a deal because wheat, for instance, is planted in September and harvested in July. So I guess we were expecting this to be over with by July and things to kind of return to normal. Well, it's not July yet, so we don't know if that's going to be the case, but I'm kind of leaning towards it's not being the case. That come July, these resources, these 12% and 13% of the corn and wheat is not going to be available because of the fighting. So they're saying whatever happens is a crop in the ground. Yeah, but who's going to own that crop at the time? If and when that crop is harvested, is it going to be harvested by Ukraine and get on the market? Or is it going to be harvested by Russia and not be on the market, presumably sanctions and export restrictions? All right, still a situation on the ground escalates to a position where farmers can't apply pesticides and fertilizer to their wheat, which will start in March. All right, so come March, and it's March now, is the time to start applying pesticides and fertilizers. All right, that could reduce the yield by up to a third, assuming they can harvest in July at all, Mr. Lee said. So, assuming they're going to be, well, I had to be out all in there, but presuming they can harvest in July. So, assuming they're going to get the harvest in July, they're at least 1/3 of their crop is at risk with fertilizer and pesticides, availability. So 700,000 metric tons of wheat are exported during the months of February, March, and April. So that's kind of right in the time frame that we're in now. So we haven't got to April yet, but the war started at the end of February, and we also had COVID restrictions and COVID issues going on before that. So we're right in this time zone where we're looking for these 700,000 metric tons. All right, and it's shipping in the, I'm not sure I pronounced that, Azov Sea. extension of the Black Sea, Crimea stopped. So shipping stopped in this area. Ships are banned from passing through the Kerch Strait. Anybody out there see this, and maybe throw in the comments how to actually pronounce this, because I don't know. All right, Russian-Ukraine ports, they export up to 18 million tons of grain each year. 18 million tons of grain. That's a lot of grain. May not be available this year, or may be some lesser portion of that. And then talking about damage to port infrastructure could also be a problem, also, obviously. And then, so they're expecting this. Okay, the trading firm will hold off on trading grains to Ukraine for at least a month, or until the situation appears to be resolved. So here again, it seems like some of the speculators were kind of not expecting this to last. Maybe they'll be right, maybe not. Here's another one. We start seeing the different countries align themselves when it comes to resources. Beijing has made Ukraine a centerpiece of its efforts to diversify grain supplies. So now, if Ukraine falls to Russia, now they'll have to deal with Russia when it comes to their grains, assuming they're not going out somewhere else to get whatever they can get. I'm assuming they're already looking. Ukraine exported a record 8.2 million tons of corn to China in 2021, making up nearly 30% of Chinese corn imports. That's a lot. That's a lot. Ukraine accounted for as much as 86% of Chinese corn imports in 2019. So China's heavily vested in what's going on over there in Ukraine. Ukraine exports barley and sunflower oil to China as well. They're big in the sunflower oil. That's another major Ukraine export. So you look at some of the other areas that are really depending on this stuff. This could cause a lot of instability in some of these areas. So you got Egypt and Indonesia are the largest buyers of Ukraine wheat, accounting for more than 15% of Ukraine wheat's imports, more than 3 million tons. Okay, according to data from Trade Data Monitor. One of the other major buyers is Turkey and Pakistan, which imported 1.7 million and 1.3 million tons respectively. So you got Egypt and Indonesia, they're getting 3 million tons, and you got Turkey and Pakistan are getting 1.7 to 1.3 million. So now they're going to have to go out to other places in the world and buy the stuff that's no longer available, just poof off the market from Ukraine and Russia. Or maybe they'll buy it even with sanctions. I don't know what's going to end up happening with that. Political stability is a major concern right now. So when you might scroll down here to the bottom, so Ukraine itself, their stuff is, their major export is agriculture related stuff, grains. The yellow in the country's flag represents crop fields, so it shows you how important it is to them, and maybe why it's important to see who controls Ukraine. With more than 41 million hectares of agricultural land covering 70% of the country, agriculture is Ukraine's largest export and largest part of its economy. Okay, so 70%, more than 70% of their entire country is agricultural land. 41 million hectares. So whoever controls that grain that's coming out of that. Okay, and there was, well, even before the invasion, pressure was on them, of course. And then they go down to talking about seasonal workers in Crimea, obviously being disrupted in that region as well. Now let's get to March. Okay, so March 4th. And you can see the narrative begin to evolve some more about why we're having these shortages. Remember, these shortages in January were starting before the war. So now, from Yahoo News, on the 4th, March 4th, you got the invasion of Ukraine as world trade and cent prices of key staples soaring. They were soaring already. Let's not forget that. But this is making them much, much worse. So let's go over some of the stuff as to what Yahoo is saying about this. So Hungary, another country, is banning grain exports. They want to make sure that they have what they need. So Hungary is banning grain exports. Argentina and Turkey also made moves this week to increase control over their local products. And Moldova, whatever. It's a smaller shipper, but they've temporarily halted exports on wheat, corn, and sugar. Right now, everybody's a big shipper because every morsel is needed. So they're talking about protectionist measures. They're blaming it on that. And they're talking about hiding fears of shortages of grain and sunflower oil, because of the war in Ukraine has brought crop shipments from much of the crucial Black Sea region to a halt. So it's not just them; the whole region's in a turmoil over this whole war situation going on. But before that, there was also some issues when it came to sanctions and protectionism, as they're talking about, where they want to make sure they have the resources to feed their people before they export to somebody else. But like I mentioned earlier, sunflower oil is a big commodity over there. So adding to soaring global food inflation, which we all have been feeling that. So Argentina, let's go into South America, right? South America is a big area that produces a lot of food as well. So Argentina, a major grain shipper, is creating a mechanism to guarantee wheat supplies for local millers to tame pasta prices. So Argentina is now engaging in some of the protectionist measures that they're talking about, right? Top flour exporter Turkey boosted Agriculture Minerals Authority over exports on an array of goods, okay, allowing it to make periodic arrangements if needed. Hungary's ban takes effect immediately. So Hungary, which is banning grain exports, immediate ban. So those things are off the market today. All right, so but that's 127,000 tons of soft wheat that's being taken off the market immediately. All right, so associations of grain producers in the country had unofficially being obstructing grains leaving the ports, right? So unofficial obstruction of ports. So let's go back to this. So elsewhere in Europe, Bulgaria, much larger exporter, is working on a system to buy grains that can be used to meet its needs, right? And state has levers and mechanisms to prepare for possible food crisis. They're now openly talking about that. You know, everybody out there knows the media and the news is questionable on its integrity and honesty. They're always coming out there with an agenda. If they're admitting that they have to have the state having levers and mechanisms to prepare for food crisis, you know they can't hide it anymore, that it's been growing for a while. They've been trying to paper over it. Now it's getting to the point where you just can't not help but notice it. Empty storage shelves, rising prices. So in other measures, top palm grower industries in Indonesia in January moved to curb shipments and boisterous domestic supply. Russia has also been taxing grain cargo since last year. So they've been holding back since last year. They've been taxing, they've been restricting exports since last year, long before any conflicts in Ukraine. All right, so let's go with this one, another March 4th. I think this is the last one I have. I could have gone on and on and on with the same exact things with pesticides, herbicides, all this other stuff, which brings me back to the seed stuff at the beginning once we go through this. All right, so this is talking about wheat prices. This is for March 4th. So wheat prices hit record highs on despite concerns about supply shortage because of the war in Ukraine. There's the narrative again. Ukraine and Russia account for about 30% of the world's traded wheat. They still have crops from last year, so they still have not even gotten all the crops they had last year out into the market, and now they're worried about this year. So that's a lot of wheat that's potentially not going to be available, and looking like it's not going to be available. If it is, you know, how much and at what price, right? So you got 30% of the world's wheat exports have been cut from the global market, right there. So that's almost a whole third of the wheat resources, poof, gone. What do you think is going to happen to prices? Now, counting, like we mentioned earlier, fuel for the stuff that's being trucked, etc. So, and that's anything made with anything that comes in a box, any kind of breads, any type of pastas, any of that sort, as well as anything else that has wheat in it. And they mentioned, you know, prices and stuff down here, 13.4 a bushel. All right, let's go on. So food inflation is expected to rise in January. Average food inflation in the world hit 7.8%. Now that was January. This was before the conflict going on between Russia and Ukraine. Now, obviously, the war is making it much worse, but this was happening before that. So big price increases are already curtailing the ability of grain importing countries to purchase wheat. Turkey, leading buyer of Russian wheat, is forced to reduce its volumes. So that means they're going to just do without, at least to some extent. I'm sure they're buying whatever they can get, but now they're going to just have to just settle with less, which hopefully not enough to lead to instability. And they're going down. Russia's war on Ukraine, potential to exacerbate food insecurity around the world. All right, so grain exports have been halted due to a lack of transportation because of port closures, while paying Russia has become more complex due to sanctions imposed by the West. So the whole idea with the sanctions is to not be able to pay them so that they can't make any money, so they can't wage war. People still need to eat, so that's just making it harder for them to buy it, but they're still going to buy it if they can. Analysts and traders are concerned about the planting of this year's spring crop, including wheat, corn, and barley. The winter wheat planted during the European autumn may not be harvested till the summer. So if this continues to go on month after month, then eventually it will hit the harvest season. Or maybe they'll be resolved by then. In addition to grain prices, farmers around the world are likely to feel the impact of rising costs of Russians and Belarus as the leading fertilizer producers. So this goes to the other coin, right? So you've got your in-the-ground wheat production getting curtailed. You've got your exporting being limited. You've got some of last year's grains still sitting and not being exported. And this year's grains looks like it's not going to be exported. Now, the other shoe to drop is going to be back to what I mentioned earlier with fertilizer. So even if you are a wheat growing country and you're growing enough, you may be relying on some of these fertilizers, or the fertilizers you buy in the store as a home gardener may be none available or harder to, or higher cost. So let's go over some of that, right? So in addition to grain prices around the world from the impact of rising costs, all right, we got that. Russian Industry and Trade Ministry recommended fertilizer producers temporarily halt exports. So Russia and Belarus talking about halting exports of fertilizer, and imagining with the sanctions, it's probably already done. Both potash and phosphate are still hitting record prices, but have not hit record prices that were hit in 2008, but that will be tested over the coming weeks. So they're saying it may get up to around what it was 2008 for record prices, which would be one more shoe to drop. Right now, there's so many shoes dropping, it's like raining shoes at this point. So Brazil's agriculture minister, they're talking about their potash supplies. South American nation, talking about Brazil, imports 80% of its fertilizers. And Russia is the biggest source, providing about 1/4. So that goes back to what I was saying before when it comes to that. Just because one country, well, the United States, in my case, doesn't necessarily need to rely on Russian wheat. But we may buy things from Brazil. Well, Brazil relies on Russian fertilizer. So because the world is so interconnected, you can't take this. If a storm crushed a ship that was carrying a load of grain or fertilizers, it would not really make a global impact. If a hurricane shuts down drilling production in the Gulf of Mexico for a week, prices may rise, dime at the pump, but it's not going to be the end of the world. This is major productions, 10, 12, 30% of the fertilizers, grain producing, and areas of the world taken completely offline for the foreseeable future, at least for this season. Hopefully not for other seasons. That's going to have a major impact in the price of food. And I go back to what was somewhat of a lighthearted article at the beginning about seeds purchasing last year was up 300%. I don't know about 2022 yet. I want to highlight all this stuff that's going on, because this means that you need to have your seeds. You need to buy seeds right now. If you have not bought them, and if you have, buy some seeds, buy some perennials. My little hardy kiwi. Buy something. Buy bags of fertilizer if you see it. I'm not promoting this bag. I just found it on sale at the end of last year's gardening season. I wonder what it goes for now. I got it on sale. I've got tons of bags of that stuff around. I've got a 5-gallon bucket of 12 in the garage. I've got a 40-pound bag of lime. I'm planning on buying more, not counting these right here that I have. And yes, I have stuff that's not that is not organic. I prefer the organic stuff. I want to be able to have a way to get away from anything that's chemical if possible, for the health benefits of not having this stuff. But guarantee you, if it comes down to it, where I need to produce food and I have a limited growing space in my garden, which I do, I have a backyard, and I have a handful of beds back there. I have a decent sized garden. For a backyard garden, it's pretty big, but it's still a backyard garden. So if I need to produce food, I'm going to produce it any way I can. If that means I have to use that shake and feed, I'll use it. If I don't need it, I won't use it. But I have plenty of other fertilizers too. The 12-12-12 I got is probably not going to be, it's not organic. I don't remember what the bag says, but I can guarantee it's not organic. But I'll be using that. There's no way I won't be using that. That's going to be the main go-to. I've got organic tomato fertilizer I'm going to be using on the tomatoes. I'm going to be increasing my amount of perennials that is going to be in large pots and containers. That way I've got something coming back every year. You've got to make sure you have something coming in. You can't rely on fishing and hunting. Everybody's gonna be doing that. You're gonna have to grow some of your own food. And I wanted to bring this example up because if you've not got seeds, get them. If you've not got fertilizer, get it. If you need tools, gardening tools, you need a hoe, a rake, a pitchfork, whatever it is you need, get it while you still can. Because once people realize this, and they're starting to, otherwise prices or otherwise availability and purchase of seeds would have gone up 300%. Not availability, lack of availability, because so many people are buying it. The more people realize this, the more people is going to be doing this. And so you need to make sure you get yours early. But anyways, I don't want to go on forever. It's already half an hour long. So I wanted to go over a few things. I try to keep politics out of this. I have my strong opinions about things, but I always try and keep that kind of stuff out of this, because no matter what your political beliefs are or what part of the country you're from or whatever, we still all need food. We still all can enjoy gardening. We still all can benefit from this. We're still all in this together at some level. But I had to bring this out there because it's not enough to just say it. Hey, make sure you buy your seeds now. Make sure you pick up a bag of fertilizer next time you're at your store, because you may go back to the store one day and it's either doubled in price or not there at all. So I want to make sure this is out there, and I wanted to bring receipts. Anyways, this is it for SHTF Garden. I'm going to go ahead and put this video up, and I'll put links to all these articles that I printed out so you can go through and read them yourself. All right, well, anyways, have a good day, and like, share, and subscribe. Try and get this message out to more people that can be prepared, the better it is for all of us. We have to diversify our system, because we can't always rely on big box stores. So anyways, SHTF Garden out.